All right, so welcome to the deep dive. We are going deep today into RBL Bank's performance
Yeah.
for Q3 of fiscal year 2025. So their financials and earnings call literally just came out yesterday, January 18th. And we've got a lot. We've got a stack of sources here ready to go.
I do.
Official documents,
Yep.
investor presentations, even the call recording itself.
That's right. We're going to extract the key insights for you, really try to figure out what's driving this performance.
Exactly. You want to know what's working, what's not working, and what it all means, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right in.
Yeah.
One of the first things that jumped out to me was the CEO's comments about the current economic climate.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't really sugarcoat things.
Mhm.
He talked about several challenges impacting the banking sector as a whole.
Yeah, I noticed that. Like you see a lot of CEOs kind of trying to be optimistic, but he seemed to be pretty frank about the headwinds.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
He specifically mentioned moderated economic growth, pressure on the rupee, tight liquidity,
Uh-huh.
and then there's always that geopolitical uncertainty kind of looming in the
Yeah,
background.
always. So basically, there are some pretty strong headwinds out there that RBL has to navigate.
Right.
I mean, what does that mean for their strategy?
Well, for one thing, I think it means they can't just assume, the good times are going to keep rolling.
Yeah.
They need to be, I think, a little bit more cautious about lending, especially in those riskier segments.
Makes sense. But despite these challenges, it seems like there are some areas where RBL is really thriving. Secured retail advances, for example, are up, what was it, a significant 38% year over year.
That's right. Mortgages, business banking, vehicle financing, all
Yeah.
those um, are performing very well for RBL.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a clear sign that they're tapping into, some strong underlying demand of the market.
Absolutely. I noticed, too, that they're placing a lot of emphasis on affordable finance, providing loans to people who maybe haven't had easy access to banking services in the past.
That's a really smart move. Not only is it, kind of socially responsible, but it's also a huge untapped market for banks.
Yeah.
RBL is clearly positioning themselves, I think, to be a leader in this space.
That's really interesting to see them balancing this push into new markets with a more cautious approach to risk in other areas.
Right.
Speaking of which, unsecured lending seems to be where things get a little more complicated.
Yeah, a little bumpy. Their credit card and microfinance portfolios, are facing some headwinds with slippages significantly higher this quarter.
We're talking a jump to 533 crore rupees in credit card slippages,
Right.
and even higher at 521 crore rupees for microfinance.
Right.
What is driving this trend?
Well, I think it goes back to those macroeconomic headwinds we talked about.
Uh-huh.
Those are having a real impact on borrowers, especially those who rely on unsecured loans.
So, like, when the economy slows down, people's ability to repay their debts takes a hit,
Exactly.
and that's reflected in these slippages.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think it's, a reflection of RBL, you know, doing something wrong,
Yeah.
but rather it's the external environment they're operating in.
Right. But I mean, the extent of the slippages, does kind of raise questions about their risk assessment
Of course.
and underwriting processes. Like, were they too lenient in the past?
Right.
And are their current measures enough to kind of course correct?
It's a good question. It's one thing to acknowledge those external factors, but RBL also needs to look inward
Right.
and make sure their own practices are sound.
For sure.
And that seems to be, what they're doing. They are focusing on cutting risk
Okay.
and increasing recovery efforts in both credit cards and microfinance.
Good.
They're also tightening up their risk filters,
Yeah.
making changes to their underwriting processes. So essentially, they're being more selective.
Okay. So they're like, learned their lesson, and now they're being more careful about who they lend to.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting that they're leveraging government schemes like the Credit Guarantee Fund for micro units
Mm-hmm.
to help kind of mitigate that risk in their microfinance lending.
That's a smart move, but I'm curious. They can only use that scheme for about 43% of their microfinance loans right now.
Right.
Why is that?
It's because the scheme doesn't cover loans for agricultural purposes.
Oh, okay.
So that kind of highlights the fact that, even when banks take these proactive steps, there are sometimes those external limitations
Right.
that can impact their strategy.
So it's like a double whammy. They've got the challenging economic climate, and then
Mhm.
they've got the policy constraints.
Exactly.
It makes their efforts to control risk even more crucial.
Absolutely. Now, even with these challenges, RBL is still seeing, growth in deposits.
That's good, yeah. I saw that their total deposits are up 15% year over year. And the growth in what they're calling their granular deposits, those under 3 crore rupees, is even more impressive at 20%.
Right.
What's the significance of that?
Well, I think it indicates, kind of a growing trust in the bank
Mm.
from, those individual depositors,
Uh-huh.
which is really, really key for building a stable and reliable funding base.
Right. It sounds like, even while they're kind of grappling with these challenges in their lending portfolio,
Right.
they're laying a pretty strong foundation for future growth.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Of course, the real test is going to be their overall financial performance
Right.
and profitability. So let's take a closer look at some of those key metrics.
All right, let's talk numbers. All right, let's talk numbers.
Okay.
One metric that stands out to me is their net interest margin, or NI, which dipped to 4.9% this quarter.
Right. NIM, gives us a snapshot of their core lending profitability. Essentially, it's the difference between the interest they earn on loans and what they pay out on deposits.
So a lower NIM suggests their profitability from lending has taken a hit. Is that directly tied to the slippages we discussed?
Yeah, absolutely. Those interest reversals from bad loans definitely play a part in that shrinking NIM. Really underscores the real cost of those struggling loan portfolios.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's not all doom and gloom on the revenue front, right?
Yeah.
Their core fee income actually grew quite a bit.
Absolutely. That's a bright spot for sure. Their core fee income, which comes from things like transaction fees and other services, is up a healthy 19% year over year.
So that diversification of revenue streams is helping to offset some of the pressure on their net interest income. That's a good sign, right?
It is, definitely. It shows they're not completely reliant on lending for profitability, and those other business lines are contributing to their bottom line.
Right. But ultimately, the bottom line is what really matters. What's the story there?
Well, this is where the impact of those slippages becomes even more apparent. Their net profit for the quarter came in at a, relatively modest 33 crore rupees.
That's significantly lower than what analysts were expecting.
Right.
It seems those increased provisions for bad loans are taking their toll.
Precisely. They're having to set aside more money to cover potential losses from those unsecured loans, and that's eating into their profits.
So even though they're seeing growth in some areas and building a solid deposit base, those problem loans are kind of casting a shadow over their overall financial picture.
Yeah, I think that's the key takeaway here. It's a balancing act. RBL is making strides in certain areas, but those gains are being offset by the challenges they're facing in unsecured lending.
It sounds like they're walking a tightrope. So what's next for RBL? Where do they go from here?
Well, based on their earnings call and investor presentation, they've laid out, a few key objectives. First and foremost, they're focusing on strengthening their balance sheet
Okay, how are they planning to do that?
by focusing on high-quality assets and, as we discussed earlier, growing those granular deposits. They're aiming to build a more stable and resilient foundation for the future.
Okay, that sounds like a sensible approach. What else is on their agenda?
Well, they're also planning to, carefully moderate their exposure to unsecured lending. They're not abandoning those segments entirely, but they're taking a much more cautious approach.
So trying to find that sweet spot between managing risk and pursuing growth opportunities.
Exactly.
What about their operational efficiency? Any plans there?
Yes. They're committed to continuing to improve operational efficiency and control costs. Essentially, looking to do more with less and make every rupee count.
That's always a good strategy, especially in a challenging economic environment. But are these goals realistic? Can they actually achieve them?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, RBL has demonstrated, I think, a willingness to adapt and take decisive action. They've shown strength in areas like secured retail and commercial banking, and their focus on granular deposits is encouraging.
They're also they're tackling those challenges in unsecured lending head on, even if it means sort of short-term pain
Right.
for potential long-term gain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, that macroeconomic environment remains uncertain. And those challenges in unsecured lending are, they're significant.
Yeah.
It's going to take a concerted effort to overcome those headwinds.
So their success is really going to hinge on their ability to execute these plans effectively and navigate the unpredictable waters ahead.
Precisely. And there are a few key factors I think will be particularly important to watch.
What are those?
First, their ability to, manage risk and control those slippages and unsecured lending, I think that's going to be paramount. If they can't get those problem loans under control, it's going to continue to drag down their profitability.
It's like trying to run a race with a weight tied to your ankle.
Exactly.
They need to address that issue to really move forward.
Exactly. Second, they need to maintain that momentum in deposit growth, particularly those granular deposits.
Right.
That'll give them the financial flexibility to, weather any future storms and pursue new opportunities.
It's all about building that solid base from which to operate.
Right, exactly. And finally, they need to execute on those plans to improve operational efficiency and control costs. I mean, every rupee saved can be reinvested in growth or used to strengthen their financial position.
So it sounds like RBL has a clear roadmap for the future, but their success will depend on their ability to, navigate these challenges, execute their strategy effectively.
Absolutely. And that's where you, the listener, come in.
Me? What do you mean?
We give you the information, the insights, the context. Now it's up to you to use this knowledge to, form your own opinions and conclusions about RBL's future.
So you're saying I shouldn't just take your word for it. I need to, do my own digging and critical thinking.
Exactly. Think of this deep dive as a launch pad. We've provided the foundation, but now it's up to you to kind of build upon it.
Okay, I see what you mean. So what are some questions I should be asking myself as I continue to explore RBL Bank?
Well, first, consider your own expectations for the bank. What level of risk are you comfortable with? And how does their performance align with your own personal financial goals or your interest in the banking sector?
That makes sense. It's not just about understanding the numbers. It's about understanding how those numbers relate to my own perspective.
Precisely. You might also want to delve deeper into some of the topics we've discussed. Research those government schemes RBL is utilizing, explore their competitor strategies, and see how their growth in certain areas compares to industry trends.
Right. I can use this deep dive as a foundation for further investigation.
Exactly. And remember, the financial landscape is constantly evolving. So stay curious, keep asking questions, and continue to, refine your understanding of the forces shaping the market.
This has been a truly insightful deep dive. I feel like I have a much better grasp of RBL Bank's current position and potential future trajectory.
We're glad to hear that. And remember, this is just one chapter in RBL Bank's story.
Yeah.
The next few quarters will be crucial in determining their long-term success.
I'll definitely be following their progress closely. Thanks for guiding me through this deep dive.
It was our pleasure. Until next time, keep exploring the world of finance.
So where does this leave us with RBL Bank? I mean, they're facing some serious challenges, but they're also taking steps to address them and trying to, capitalize on opportunities.
Yeah, it's a real mixed bag for sure. There are reasons to be both optimistic and cautious, I think.
Right, and I think that's what makes this whole story so interesting. It's not like a clear-cut case of success or failure. It's a company in transition, trying to find its footing in a, rapidly changing landscape.
Absolutely, and I think that's what makes it so relevant for you, the listener, because in many ways, RBL Bank's journey kind of reflects those broader challenges and opportunities facing the financial sector as a whole.
So by understanding RBL's story, we can gain insights into, the bigger picture. We can start to see the forces that are shaping the future of finance.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. The rise of affordable finance, the need for stricter risk management, the importance of, building a stable deposit base, the constant pressure to improve efficiency. These are all themes that resonate far beyond just RBL Bank.
Yeah, there are challenges and opportunities that every bank, every financial institution is kind of grappling with right now.
Absolutely. And that's why, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep learning. Don't just take our word for it, right?
Right.
Do your own research. Dig deeper into the topics that, pique your interest and form your own conclusions.
I mean, this deep dive has been a great starting point, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg.
Think of it as a springboard. We've provided the foundation, but now it's up to you to build upon it.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in learning more about RBL Bank or about the broader trends shaping the financial sector, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're always happy to, connect and share our insights.
And remember, the world of finance is constantly evolving. So stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Great advice. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into RBL Bank's Q3 performance. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
Yeah, and we look forward to diving into more fascinating financial stories with you in the future.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning.
This is The Deep Dive, signing off.